What do a flooded long-term care home in Ottawa and a First Nation evacuating over a water crisis have in common? They both expose the costs of underbuilt infrastructure in a harsher climate, and they're unfolding as Canada's economy and politics shift under our feet. Quick weather for Ottawa. Around 1 degree Celsius today, ranging from -2 to 3 degrees Celsius, and no rain or snow. Let's start local. 26 residents at Carleton Lodge, the city-run long-term care home, were temporarily relocated after a pipe burst flooded roughly 40 rooms. Staff have been working extended hours to keep residents safe and stable as repairs begin. The incident is a reminder that when critical buildings age, a single failure can ripple through families, care teams, and city services in an instant. Zooming out to northern Ontario, Kashishewan First Nation is planning a large-scale evacuation after a major failure at its water treatment facility. The plant has been in disrepair for some time, and people have been relying on bottled water and even snowmelt. Pump failures are raising sewage contamination risks, and local leaders say the provincial response has been inadequate, pushing the community to arrange flights and ask for military support. Whether it's extreme weather or basic maintenance, the lesson is the same. Canada's water and wastewater systems, especially in the north, need resilient design and consistent funding to protect health. Workforce stresses are showing up here in Ottawa too. Pearly Health is facing protests over plans to cut 52 jobs. 39 unionized and 13 non-unionized, about 6% of its workforce. Management says the positions come from a float and replacement pool, and that they'll try to redeploy staff in partnership with CUPE. Families and workers worry about what fewer hands on deck could mean for care at a time when demand is rising. It's a tough balance many health organizations are facing. Budgets aren't keeping up with the needs of an aging population. Labour in the tech and gaming world, Ubisoft has shuttered its Halifax studio, cutting 71 jobs amid cost-cutting and efficiency moves. The company denies the closure was tied to workers' recent unionization, but affected staff are calling for clarity on the timing. For Canada's broader tech workforce, it's another signal that companies are streamlining teams and projects. Across the industry, new tools, including artificial intelligence, are changing how games and software are made, even when AI isn't cited as the reason. These shifts are reshaping which roles companies prioritize, and that's hitting regional studios hard. On the national economy, Canadian heavy oil is taking a hit. Western Canada Select is trading at a $14.45 discount to West Texas Intermediate, the widest since mid-2024. One driver, the prospect of up to 50 million barrels of Venezuelan oil supplying the United States after recent U.S. moves around Venezuela. For producers here, that wider discount means slimmer margins, even as shipping routes and refinery demand get juggled. And our trade picture with the U.S. is changing too. In October, Canadian exports to the U.S. fell to 67.3% of total exports, the lowest non-pandemic share since 1997, amid ongoing U.S. tariffs and Canada's push to diversify. Imports from the U.S. actually rose 5.3%, contributing to a national merchandise trade deficit of $583 million. We did see strength in electronics and precious metals, and Canada is finding traction with more gold heading to the UK and oil to China. For Ottawa households, these shifts won't show up overnight, but over months they influence jobs, the dollar, and government revenues that pay for services. International politics are seeping into that economic story. French President Emmanuel Macron took aim at U.S. foreign policy, pointing to former President Donald Trump's threats toward Canada, specifically the idea of making Canada a 51st state, as an example of sacrificing alliances for raw power. European leaders, including Germany's Frank-Walter Steinmeier, also flagged U.S. moves in places like Venezuela and even Greenland as efforts to dominate the Western Hemisphere. For Canada, that's not just diplomatic drama. It touches our energy exports, our trade rules, and how much room we have to set our own policy when big powers flex. Back home on Parliament Hill, political pieces are moving. Nunavut MP Laurie Idlout with the NDP says she's been asked to consider crossing the floor to the Liberals, but she has no plans to do so now. The Liberals, hungry for a majority, have already brought over 2 MPs from the Conservatives. Meanwhile, Chrystia Freeland, former Deputy Prime Minister and Finance Minister, will resign her MP seat today to take on an unpaid part-time advisory role with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. Opposition parties are pressing on potential conflicts of interest, while supporters note her deep ties to Ukraine and her leading role in opposing Russia's invasion. A by-election and cabinet consequences may follow, so watch that space. Public safety policy is in the spotlight too, with the federal gun buyback pilot off to a shaky start. In a Cape Breton test designed to iron out procedures before a national rollout, only 25 ban assault-style firearms were collected, far short of the targeted 200. The government says it learned operational lessons around registration and system reliability. But critics, from the opposition to taxpayer advocates, are blasting the cost and efficacy, and some police voices argue the program won't meaningfully reduce crime. Ottawa has committed $12.4 million to Quebec to cover its part of implementation, and the overall federal envelope is north of $700 million. With finances tight and results underwhelming so far, expect louder calls for transparency and measurable outcomes. Let's talk Senators. The season isn't just about on-ice mistakes. It's the storm around the team. From injuries to roster shuffles to the pressure cooker of a slipping record, the problems are more complex than a bad line change. Tonight, Ottawa faces the NHL-leading Colorado Avalanche, and both teams are on 2-game skids. Oddsmakers have Colorado as heavy favorites at about -260, with the Sens near +210. Nathan MacKinnon leads the league in goals, but hasn't scored in 2 games. Dangerous territory for a rebound. Ottawa sits near the bottom of the East, yet somehow just 4 points out of a wild card. The first period could be pivotal. Colorado's been strong early. Ottawa less so, but both teams have been pushing pace that favors early scoring. Roster-wise, the Sens moved goaltender Linus Ullmark to a non-roster spot to make room for Lars Eller's return tonight. Ullmark's $8.25 million cap hit still counts, and he last played December 27th against the Leafs, sitting at a 2.95 goals against average and .881 save percentage this season. He's an 11-year vet and a recent Jesno winner with Boston, so the hope is that time and health restore his form. Eller, out since December 11th with a lower body injury, brings veteran stability down the middle. 2 goals and 6 points in 28 games this season, and 190 goals, 430 points over 1,144 career games. If Ottawa can weather the first 10 minutes, get pucks deep, and keep special teams honest, stealing points in Denver isn't impossible. A quick grassroots sports note to end on a high. Moose Jaw's Battle on the Prairies football tournament is back at the Yarra Center, now drawing 24 teams across Canada, the U.S., and Mexico. It's about safety, learning, and big game reps for young athletes, plus a bracing introduction to the Canadian prairie winter for those traveling up from Mexico. CFL linebacker Nick Anderson is among those highlighting how valuable this kind of exposure can be for development. Before we go, a thread ties a lot of today's stories together: resilience. Whether it's water systems in the north, seniors' care in Ottawa, the oil patch navigating global politics, or a hockey club trying to pull out of a spiral, resilience comes from planning, investment, and adapting fast when conditions change. That's the assignment for 2026, from climate-proof infrastructure to smart economic diversification to a lineup that can close out a first period in Denver. If you've got a tip on a local story, especially around infrastructure, healthcare staffing, or how tech changes are affecting your job, send it our way. And Sens fans, breathe. There's still runway. Thanks for listening. Stay warm, take care of each other, and we'll talk soon.